Hi friends, and here's our full chapter 5 review to be ready for a test tomorrow. So chapter 5 started out with a section on evaluate or evaluating expressions. Okay, when it asks you to evaluate, all it means is put numbers in for letters and DTM, do the math. Okay, and remember PEMDAS. Okay, this comes up quite a bit while we're doing algebra. We have to make sure that we do our order of operations, parentheses, exponents, then multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. Okay, so good to remember the PEMDAS. All right, here we go. First example, 8g minus f if g equals -1 and f equals 4. Okay, so step 1, put the numbers in for the letters. Okay, I would probably put them in parentheses as well. So we've got an 8 on the outside, g is -1, minus, and then f is 4. So then if we do that math, 8 times -1 is -8, and that's really a -4. And they have the same sign, so we keep the sign and add them like normal. Ta-da! Next example. All right, now this one I purposefully made pretty tricky. Hopefully there aren't any this tricky on your assignment. Okay, so 5 plus g on the inside, all raised to the second power and all divided by 2. Woo! So order of operations says we got to do all the math we can up here first before we do the division. That's going to be the last thing we do. Okay, and we're going to evaluate this if g equals -1 again. All right, so I'm just going to fill it out over here. 5 plus -1, and close the parentheses, squared all over 2. 5 plus -1 is 4, and that's being squared and divided by 2. We have to do the squared first. Squared means that number times itself. 4 times 4 is 16, divided by 2 is 8. Okay. Awesome. Good times. Next, so that was section 1. Section 2 was on sequences. And we only dealt with arithmetic sequences. Just makes you sound smart if you say stuff like that. Okay, and the arithmetic sequence, basically all they're going to ask for is what number do you add to each term to get to the next. Okay, so we're only going to do one example of these because I only want to do one. So we've got 4.5 and 6.0, and then 7.5, and then 9.0. Okay, so if you can't just look at it and know, take any term and subtract the term before it. So 7.5 minus 6.0, and the number that we're adding is 1.5 each time. Okay, and then sometimes it'll ask you to, do the next 3 terms, though I don't know that that's part of the test. Ooh, all right. Our next section is on all the properties and identities. Properties and identities, okay? So first property is commutative. Okay, and that one, remember commute, going on a commute, the numbers can switch places if you only have all addition or all multiplication. So for example, we can have 9 times A times B, and it's the same thing as B times 9 times A. See how the B kind of jumped over to be in front? Okay, commutative property says that that's going to get us the same answer no matter which way we do that. Okay, associative. And the associative property is the idea that we can move parentheses, again, if we have all addition or all multiplication, and it doesn't change the value. So this one looks like 5 plus parentheses A plus 8 is going to be the same thing as 5 plus A in parentheses plus 8. So what this means is we switch from adding these two first and then adding this one in to adding those two first and adding that one in. Should come out to be the same. Okay, next one, the additive identity. Okay, and that's what number can you add to another number and it doesn't change the value. That is the adding 0. So like 27 plus 0 equals 27. Okay, so additive identity is the adding 0 one. Okay, multiplicative identity. Same idea, except for this time, what can we multiply by and not change the value? So -8 times 1 still equals -8. Okay? So multiplying by 1 doesn't change the value. That's the multiplicative identity. And the last one is the multiplicative property of 0. And that's if you multiply by 0, you get 0. So like 1,435 times 0, still 0. Done and done. Okay, so you just need to be able to identify from examples like this, just name which property is being used. Okay, after that we did distributive property. Okay, and the distributive property looked like we could have 2b plus 8 and 5 on the outside. Remember, you can have a number outside the parentheses on either side. Still means the same thing. We need to multiply everybody on the inside by the guy on the outside. So we're going to do 5 times 2b. 5 times 2 is 10, and the b will stay. And then plus 5 times 8 is 40. Okay, and ooh, that makes me want to factor that one. Because it'd be really easy to take a 10 out of both of those. All right, another couple distributing practicings. This time with the negative. -8 times a plus b. Okay, and you just want to do the -8 times a, which gives us -8a, and -8 times b, which gives us -8b. Ta-da! All right, now this one's kind of ultimate challenge when it comes to distributing. Ready? -4m on the outside, and then 3n minus 6p. But we do it the same way. So we'll do the -4m times 3n. We're going to multiply the numbers together. -4 times 3 is -12. And then we just multiply the letters, which means writing them right next to each other. And we tend to do it in alphabetical order. So I would say mn. Okay, and then we're going to have a negative times a negative, which means the second one is positive. 4 times 6 is 24, and M-N-O-P, so M goes first, M-P. All right, so distributive property. You'll notice we use that a lot. It's not going away anytime soon. Oh boy, here we go. That's like halfway through the chapter already. All right, next section was simplify. And we just reviewed simplifying a lot yesterday, so hopefully it's still fresh on your mind. Just remember we can only combine like terms. And if it helps you remember, that's like apples and shoes. We just can't really add them together. I would say rhinoceros shoes or whatever, but I don't want to have to try to spell rhinoceros on video, so there you go. Not gonna. All right, since we practiced this so much yesterday, we're just gonna do one. -3r plus 7 minus 3r minus 12. Okay, so hopefully you guys remember the minus thing is really adding a negative both times, so those are just negative. So I'm gonna look at I still have my colored pencils from before. So we've got our two r terms, and then we've got our two constants. Okay, so we've got -3r and a -3r. So at -3, and we're going to go down 3 more. So that's -6r. And then 7 and -12. The bigger number is negative, and then the difference is 5. Okay. Plus the next section is pretty much the same thing. It was adding linear expressions. Okay, and if there's any distribute, if needed, then simplify. Okay, we'll do one example of this, because again, it's pretty much basically just simplifying. So -4x plus 5 plus 15x minus 3. Okay, now when we just have a plus here and there's nothing but ninja ones in front of our parentheses, then we can just pretend the parentheses aren't even there, and we can combine our like terms. Okay, so -4 plus 15, we have way more positive, so it's going to be positive. And if we find the difference, it's 9 with an x, and 5 minus 3 is 2. Okay, now the next section was kind of tricky. So this was subtracting linear expressions. Close enough. And this one, it is imperative, super important, to distribute the negative, and usually it's a ninja one before simplifying. Okay, and that's the part that I think gets forgotten a lot of the time, is we forget to do that distributing. So let's look at this. We'll start with -6x minus 11 minus -2x minus 4. Okay, do you see the difference between these two? Okay, we have a plus there, and because there's no other numbers on the outside, we can just pretend the parentheses aren't there. This negative is really like adding -1. So technically we have a -1 outside this parentheses, so I have to distribute that through. So this one, the parentheses can just go away. And over here, we've got negative times a negative, which makes it positive 2x, and a negative times a -4 is positive 4. Okay, that's the trickiest bit. Make sure that you practice that a lot so that you can feel confident with that. Now I'll combine my like terms, mix it up. This time we'll do the x terms in orange. And There we go. So I'm going to put my x terms together. I've got negative 6x and positive 2x. I have more negatives, so the answer will be negative. And 4x is the difference. Then we look at the constants. Again, I have more negatives, so it's going to be negative, and the difference between 4 and 11 is 7. Okay, so again, the trickiest bit on these is to distribute that negative through. Okay, anytime you have a subtract and then parentheses, you have to distribute the negative through. We're getting close. Let's practice it one more time. 4x plus 10 minus negative 3x plus 5. Okay, so again, the first parentheses, we can just copy all of that down. Nothing changes. Now we need to distribute this negative through, which means it's going to change the signs, because a negative times a negative is positive, and a negative times a positive is negative. Okay, and then we combine like terms. So 4x plus 3x is 7x. And 10 minus 5 is 5. All right, and then the last section was on factoring. And remember, this is just undoing distributing. And so we want to find the greatest common factor, and then that goes on the outside of the parentheses. All right, so let's start with an easier one. 18x plus 6. First, we want to find our greatest common factor. Greatest common factor is, at first I was thinking 3, but guess what? 6 actually goes into 18. So the greatest common factor is actually going to be 6. So I put 6 on the outside of the parentheses, and then we do 18 divided by 6 is 3, with an x next to it still. 6 divided by 6 is 1. Okay, so that's factored. Now the next one's a little bit trickier. So this one is 32x plus 24y. All right, and I can't just look at that and think to myself, I mean, I can because I know what the answer is. But if you look at those and you can't figure out to yourself what number goes into both of those, or the biggest number that goes into both of those. Sorry, keep yawning. Whew. Apparently it's my nap time. 32 is 8 times 4. 8 is 4 times 2. 4 is 2 times 2. So 2 is prime, so when we hit 2, we're done. And then 4 is 2 times 2. So 32 is actually just 2 to the 5th power. So we can write this over here. 32x prime factorized is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, whoo, times x. All right, and then 24, it's 2 times 12, 2 times 6, and 2 times 3. So 24y is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times y. Then we'll circle our pairs. That's a pair of 2's, that's a pair of 2's, and that's a pair of 2's. Nothing else matches. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. 8. The greatest common factor is therefore 8. And so that's what goes on the outside of the parentheses. And then you do each one of these divided by 8. So 32 divided by 8 is 4 with an x. And 24 divided by 8 is a 3 with a y. Okay, and that's it for factoring and for Chapter 5. Good luck on the practice test and on the regular test.